It was a chilly autumn evening in a quiet American town. The streets were almost empty, except for the glow of neon signs flickering outside the local diner. Inside, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. Families gathered in booths, truckers sipped on hot meals after long drives, and the sound of silverware clinking against plates echoed through the warm, cozy place. Among all the customers sat a young girl, maybe around 16 or 17, sitting alone at the corner booth. Her name was Emily. Emily wasn't like other kids her age. She had been born with a disability that made her walk slower, her legs not moving like everyone else's. She relied on crutches to get around. Despite her challenges, she was full of life, carrying a soft smile that could light up a room. That night, she had saved up her small allowance to treat herself to a warm meal at the diner. She sat quietly, cutting into her pancakes, enjoying the rare chance of feeling independent. But not everyone saw her strength. A group of teenage boys walked in, loud, laughing, and ready to cause trouble. They wore cocky grins and carried themselves like they owned the place. Everyone in town knew them, spoiled troublemakers who got away with almost everything. They noticed Emily sitting alone, vulnerable. Instead of leaving her in peace, they smirked and exchanged looks, sensing an opportunity to humiliate someone weaker than them. One of them, the leader, swaggered over to Emily's booth. "Hey, cripple," he sneered loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Emily froze, her fork trembling in her hand. People turned to look, but no one intervened. The boy grabbed her crutch and leaned on it like it was a toy. His friends laughed loudly, egging him on. Emily's eyes welled up with tears, but she tried to stay calm. "Please," she whispered, "give it back." Instead of showing mercy, the boy shoved her crutch back into her hands so roughly that she nearly fell from her seat. Then, in an act of pure cruelty, he slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the diner, silencing the chatter. Gasps filled the air. Emily's cheek turned red instantly as tears streamed down her face. The bullies laughed, proud of themselves, and strutted out of the diner, leaving Emily humiliated in front of everyone. For a moment, the diner was frozen. People stared, shocked, but no one moved. A few whispered to each other, some shook their heads in disapproval, but no one stood up to help the girl. Emily quickly wiped her tears, trying to pretend it hadn't happened. She forced herself to finish her meal, her hands trembling. She didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. But destiny was about to turn the tables. An hour passed. The diner had grown busier, and just as Emily prepared to leave, the sound of roaring engines filled the street outside. One after another, motorcycles pulled up, their headlights flashing, their engines growling like thunder. The windows rattled as at least a dozen bikers parked outside. The door creaked open, and in walked a group of leather-clad men and women. They wore heavy boots, jackets with patches, and had the kind of presence that made the whole diner go silent. Everyone turned to look. The leader of the group was a tall man with a long beard and tattoos covering his arms. His name was Jack. He had the kind of face that carried stories of pain, survival, and grit. Behind him, his crew filed in, men and women of all ages, tough and intimidating. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The waitress, nervous but polite, led them to a large table. As they settled down, ordering coffee and burgers, Jack's sharp eyes scanned the diner. That's when he noticed Emily. She was struggling to stand up, adjusting her crutches. He saw the redness on her cheek, the tears still lingering in her eyes. Jack leaned over to the waitress and quietly asked, "What happened to that girl?" The waitress hesitated, not wanting to stir trouble, but Jack's piercing eyes demanded the truth. She sighed and explained what had happened earlier, the bullies, the slap, the humiliation, and how no one stepped in to protect the girl. Jack's jaw tightened, and his crew overheard. They exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. Jack stood up from his table, towering over the diner. He walked straight to Emily's booth. She looked up, startled by his presence. "Hey, sweetheart," Jack said softly, his rough voice carrying unexpected warmth. "Did those boys hurt you?" Emily hesitated, embarrassed, but finally nodded. Jack knelt down beside her so he was at eye level. "Listen," he said gently, "nobody gets to treat you like that. Not while we're around." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small biker patch, and placed it in front of her. "From now on, you're family. And family doesn't get bullied." Emily's eyes widened. She didn't know what to say. For the first time that night, she felt safe. The bikers around the diner nodded in agreement, some even giving her reassuring smiles. But Jack wasn't finished. He asked the waitress, "Those kids, they still hanging around town?" She nodded reluctantly, mentioning they often loitered at the gas station nearby. Jack cracked his knuckles. All right then. The bikers finished their meal quickly. Jack paid for Emily's food, refusing to let her spend her own money. Then, with a firm but caring tone, he said, "Stay here, sweetheart. We'll be back." The crew marched out, their boots echoing on the diner floor, and within seconds, the roar of engines filled the night again. Emily sat there, stunned, wondering what was about to happen. At the gas station a mile away, the bullies were still hanging out, laughing, leaning against their cars. Suddenly, the rumble of motorcycles grew louder. They turned to see headlights approaching like a wave of thunder. The bikers pulled in, surrounding the boys in a tight circle. Fear replaced their cocky grins. Jack stepped off his bike, his boots hitting the pavement like thunder. He walked up to the leader of the bullies, the same boy who had slapped Emily. The boy stammered, "We didn't mean anything, sir," but Jack's stare cut through him like steel. "You think it's funny to hit a girl? A disabled girl? You think that makes you a man?" Jack's voice was low but filled with fire. The boy's friends shifted nervously, realizing they had messed with the wrong girl. Jack grabbed the boy by his shirt and pulled him close. "You ever touch her again, you'll answer to all of us. Understand?" His crew revved their engines, the sound echoing like a war cry. The boy's face turned pale as he nodded furiously. Jack released him, shoving him back toward his friends. "Now, you're gonna go back to that diner, and you're gonna apologize. Right in front of everyone." The boys hesitated, but one glare from the bikers left them no choice. Terrified, they piled into their car and drove straight back to the diner, escorted by the roaring bikes. Inside, Emily's eyes widened as she saw the boys return. The bikers marched in behind them, arms crossed, forming a wall of silent strength. The boy approached Emily's booth, his voice trembling. I'm sorry for what I did. I was wrong." His friends mumbled apologies too, their bravado completely shattered. The diner, which had fallen silent again, erupted into whispers. Everyone was watching. Emily didn't say much, she just looked at them, her eyes still full of hurt but also relief. Jack stood behind her, his massive hand resting gently on her shoulder, silently telling her she wasn't alone anymore. The boys quickly left, their pride broken, their lesson learned. But the story didn't end there. From that day on, the bikers became Emily's protectors. They often visited the diner just to check on her. Jack even offered to teach her how to ride on the back of his bike safely, giving her a taste of freedom she had never felt before. Emily's confidence grew, and word spread across town about what had happened that night. People who had once stayed silent began to realize the importance of standing up for those who can't fight for themselves. The diner staff, ashamed of not intervening, promised never to let something like that happen again. And the bullies, they never dared to bother Emily again, or anyone else, for that matter. What started as an act of cruelty ended as a powerful reminder that sometimes angels don't come with wings, they come with roaring engines, leather jackets, and hearts bigger than anyone could imagine. This story reminds us all of one simple truth: kindness and courage can change lives, and standing up for what's right is always worth it. Because in the end, it wasn't just Emily who was saved that night. It was the whole town that was taught a lesson in humanity.